This is Jupiter day turning into night. So moon, night, and moon hour. Moon. The ascendant is on 22nd degree of Capricorn, which is notable. And Saturn here in the third house. The moon in 29th anaretic degree of Saturn ruled Aquarius, separating from the opposition with Mars. Midheaven, the IC is on Jupiter. Another thing to note. So the moon is ruling the 7th house. But this episode is actually about a new beginning with Rahu in Aries, which here is in the 4th house. And the presence of Chiron during the eclipses with Aries ruled Rahu, or Mars ruled Rahu from. This deserves an even bigger episodes, but I do have only 12% battery. So we'll have to go with the battery here. And that will not allow me to look at each and every eclipse, which I desire to do. The thing is, Chiron, and I'm going to say it quite, so you're going to have to listen a couple of times maybe. I want to tell you about the cycle of Chiron. On a mundane level, the atomic veterans were silenced for 50 years. Chiron returns every 50 years. Okay? After Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the atomic veterans were silenced for 50 years. It's not impossible that the kidnapping of Yemen children in Israel was another 50 years classified case that was not exposed. So this bearing a stamp of 50 years of a wound we cannot heal. Think about the atomic veterans unable to speak to one another and heal their trauma because they weren't allowed to speak even to one another. Definitely not about the events, which was incredibly traumatic. And I encourage you to listen to veterans, especially now in these nuclear times. It's quite good to like YouTube the atomic veterans and listen to what they have to say. For me, when I see Rahu in Aries, Aries is new beginning, Rahu is new beginning. So self-assertion. Chiron, present there, tells me that whatever begins now, this is relevant both on a personal level. Like this is in my 2nd house of income, values, okay? Stuff like that. Whatever begins for you now, or whatever begins in the world right now, carries a stamp of 50 years of something that would need to heal. There's something that is not radically accepted. And this is around the sense of self of people. So it's both on a mundane level. They're going to be with Aries for sure. People's desiring for self-determination. More countries desiring for independence. A lot of declarations. I shared a post today. Okay, a lot of declarations of independence are going to be written in the coming times. And yet there is this Chironic wound around this. And Chiron returns at 50. It means there's a cycle of 50 years of whatever begins now that requires healing that would take 50 years. Some of us are not going to be, amongst the living when this cycle is done, okay? Like, unless I'm going to be 89, if I live to that age, I probably won't be there when Chiron returns to this same point in Aries, whatever starts there. Okay, it's going to be after my legacy, after like legacy after my death or whatnot. But or not, I don't know. When you think about such significance, you think about things that start on a mundane level that carry a stamp of 50 years, that they are either classified or the world is not ready to listen to that. Mind you, if I go to the example of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki, it was considered a very good, it seemed like a good idea in its time. Everybody was supporting that. Okay, it seems like, oh, that's the act that changed the face of the world. Pretty much so. Yet the Security Council still to this day have the winning countries of the Second World War. The Security Council includes Russia, China, UK, France, and the US. That's the P5. It does not include Japan. Okay? The Security Council it's the only known public legislated body that can decide upon unanimous decision to have a military invasion to one of the countries. A multiple operation of military invasion. Okay? You can imagine that invasion won't be to Russia, China, UK, France, or the US. I can't guarantee for Japan. So that structure, okay, it is ascendant Saturn in Capricorn. Okay, we're talking about structure. So this is the nature, the structure of military invasion in as far as we know. We the people of the entire population of the world. This is what's available to us if we can reach a website that can speak our language and tell us about the structure of the UN or the Security Council within the UN. It's the only committee that you can go to if you want to have military invasion, which, by the way, is possible. If all these countries agree to invade into a country, that can be passed unanimously. It doesn't matter what the other committees think. If the P5 is on par on that, that's something that, like, it's if it is possible, and I don't remember by heart all the model UN work that I did in academia, but if it is possible, then it's gonna take like, I don't even know if it's possible. If the P5 decides on something, I don't even think it's called non-unanimous, but I don't remember, and things do change. Speaking of the UN, okay, Keto is with Libra. International politics. So they say war is the continuation of negotiation in other means. That being said, war does lead to negotiations. Okay? Mars will be with Keto in one of the eclipses, just like Venus was with Keto in one of the eclipses, and then women lost their right to have an abortion. Okay? It's kind of like the great leap forward is actually a great leap backwards. And what stays, what remains, and then the overturning of that extreme polarity into the other polarity. Okay? Things that can come up, positive things that can come up, a certain restriction, dissolution of the P5. It can be positive, it can be incredibly negative, by the way, but it can also be quite positive. Okay, so dissolution of the P5, dissolution of the Security Council, dissolution of certain rights to carry arms by the individual, which can be both positive and negative. It really does depend how is it structured and what's going on. Denuclearification Like all those things are possibilities. I'm not saying they're going to happen. I'm not saying they're not going to happen with the crisis involved, like bombs going off. But certain things, when Mars is going to reach Ketu, basically are purging a certain type of militarism. Unfortunately, it can also mean rejuvenation in our weapon. Okay, or weapon, or diplomacy becoming a weapon, or purging of diplomacy, certain types of weapon, or purging of giving ammunition to other countries. Again, it can be a pro, it can be a con. It depends on so many factors. But what I came here, what I pressed record for, and I always take a look at what made me press record. So what made me press record? I was recording this video about the new moon in Cancer, squaring the nodes. And I could not, at a certain point, it was like, oh, Chiron is carrying a stamp of future. It's not that I didn't speak about this, but as we getting, well into the ingress, and we're minutes away, literally 19 minutes away from the ingress, in terms of astrology, of the nodes into the Libra Aries axis, which is going to flip the rulership of Rahu and Ketu. They both are ruled by Venus and Mars, but Venus was ruling Rahu, now Mars is ruling Rahu. Okay, but Venus was with Mars sign, with Ketu, but Mars is going to be with Ketu too. But what made me press record is when I saw this Chiron popping here at the 19 degrees of Aries, just popping, telling me every new beginning, and Rahu is in Aries, so mundanely there are going to be a lot of new beginnings that are Aries related. New heads, okay, new militaries, new weapon, new types of diplomacy, new countries, new declarations of independence, new identities, paramount. And there's going to be a timestamp of 50 years, 50, of something that would only be able to be tended to, grieved, and healed in 50 years on a mundane level. Now, it's not the first time that such things happen. Okay? When Chiron was probably on my ascendant, I was a Me Too veteran. Okay? Obviously, that's a 50 years. Okay? It's not the first time where Chiron is somewhere and the news go through it. Because Chiron takes a while. It takes 50 years to circle the zodiac. I'm not going to try to divide 50 by 12 because, but let's say it takes probably around 4 years, roughly, 50 divided by 12, 12 double, 40, and then 2, double 4. So that would be 48 years. Okay, so probably roughly 4 years around each sign. Okay, of course, some faster, some slower, but it's not impossible to have an eclipse there. Okay? It happened in Pisces, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, if I'm not mistaken, it happened in Pisces. Oh my God, having Ketu there on my ascendant, like you hear about it, it doesn't go anywhere. And trying to speak up at the same time. But now with Aries again, Let's see, we got 10%. Let's try to look at the eclipses. So this is astroseek.com, great site run by Peter. So this is one we had on Aries. Not gonna go over that one. Let's go to the next one because October 14, we already have an eclipse chart. And let's see where this Chiron is 17. Chiron is retrograde in this eclipse. And the eclipse is like applying to Spica. It's not on Spica. It's 21 degrees. Libra with Ketu on Spica, like related per se, real purging diplomacy. I touched on that when I looked at the eclipses. So Rahu is still within distance from this Ketu, from this Chiron. Then we're gonna have another one in Taurus. My Venus, thank you very much. And 5 degrees Libra. Yet another. This happens in 25 March 2024. So this is also already a 2024 eclipse. And this one is a particular, this is probably this is the one, because Rahu is going to be 2 degrees away from a direct Chiron. Okay, the lunation is happening between 5 Aries and the lunation itself 5 Libra. Okay, lunar eclipse, prenumbral lunar eclipse, but Chiron is with Rahu. Yeah, and the sun is sitting pretty with my Lilith, but that's life. Chiron with Rahu, whatever starts now, have a 50 years stamp. It means that there's a new beginning, there's a self-assertion, and there is a wound around a certain part of us, something, people, autonomy is needing a reconciliation that will take 5 decades. I don't know, okay? On a mundane level, it's easier to delineate than on a personal level. On a personal level, I say that you take this new beginning with a grain of salt, that you understand that, yes, there's this new beginning, and there is something that you're starting there that will take a while. And this while is there's something happening there, and then you're just living with it for 5 decades. Okay. If you don't have placements there, you gotta check what Mars is doing. It's gonna affect Mars, but you're gonna be less affected. Okay, Chiron is not on a happy degree, see 18 degree. But you're gonna be less affected by this lunation if you don't have anything in the beginning of Aries or the beginning of Libra. Okay, I have my Lilith there. To tell you that I'm looking forward for this lunation, I can't really say that. But Mercury is going to be in 23rd degree of Aries. We have this significant placement in Aries. So this is the March 25th. This is a particularly one that's going to trigger this Chiron. Then we have 8 April 2024. This is just the emphasis on Chiron with Aries. Chiron again is going to be in the 19 degrees of Aries with the sun and the moon. There's a German word for that, is also Dutch for that, is called verdammt. Recite after me. Verdammt this shit. Verdammt. Because this is a verdammt. Okay? Rahu is 15 degrees. The lunation is 19 degrees. Chiron is 19 degrees. Verdammt this thing. Okay. It's a new beginning, a self-assertion. You're like, the head of the baby comes out, and there's a Chiron to it. Mars is applying to conjunct Saturn. What can I say? In Pisces. Okay, it's not the best looking eclipse out there. I know there were these talks of like Denver, Colorado, and all like other stuff, like the eclipse hitting on these places. Get really, but like for 2 years, I've been seeing these Twitter posts. I think even the astrology podcast, like shared them or something, or created some or something like that. Like those gonna be the. Okay, the creative ideas that I have around what can happen there and the way I opened this episode is not something that they can ignore. It doesn't seem rational from now that some A-bombs will drop on Denver or anything like that. And I don't want to go there. It's not about going, but like I said, something's going to happen. And you see these eclipses are pinpointing that thingy that has a 50 years cycle, 5 decades. There's some things that's happening that you can only even begin to accept around like 5 decades. You're gonna build up for that. Okay, Chiron in our lives matures at 50. Okay, I don't have Chiron in Aries. I have Chiron in Gemini, but with Sedna now reiterated on that. So and again, for Sedna, check my Sedna stories. Honor Inuit culture, honor people in general, like children, people, and so on and so forth. Marine life, and it doesn't matter where your Chiron is. Okay, in your life, your Chiron matures at 50. I refer you to Tom Jacobs, who is now 50 and is doing a webinar on Chiron, return. Okay, which I'm actually considered to take myself, as I'm in the 4th house perfection with Chiron in my 4th house. So I'll probably not be benefited from that. But also with Chiron, you have to understand in your personal life, it's something that you have to create the path of healing for yourself. It may be useful to share your experience, to give some validation to people. This is literally what Tom Jacobs is doing right now. He's been very authentic, very honest. He has his chart on his website, very transparent. But also, you have to understand that with Chiron, neither the shaman nor the MD can have a full answer. You have to pick up, like, you have to get some from this, some from that. They are right in this, they are right in that. And it looks like the solutions are kind of like a Swiss cheese solution. And you have to fill up the holes in that Swiss cheese to kind of make something whole that you make in it. And that's a 5 decades thing. So for a lot of us, we're just going to witness that. And it's going to be on a mundane level. That being said, if you do have placements in Aries, you have been like, Uncle Sam wants you to the. I'm having this vision of like Uncle Sam wants you, with pointing the finger. You want in the U.S. Army, and that's kind of like the universe recruiting you, and the U.S. is kind of popping up in a way that. The Declaration of Independence, the Declaration of Independence for the United States is about, in God we trust. And I'm seeing all kinds of stuff to do with the shadow of what people associate as divinity, but is actually not really anywhere there. And I'm possibilitist myself, so I'm not atheist or anything like that. But which is the God? It's like I said on post, which is the God, and what when we say trust, what is that trust? Okay, You know, with Chiron, there's a wound around self-assertion. There's a wound around doing, which is Aries, you. Okay, Aries rules the head. So if you say, I think, therefore I am, and you think, then you realize you're channeling. Who am I channeling? Okay, so it's another question. I think, therefore I am. What governs my thinking? What biases my thoughts? It can take 5 years to work through this. I just felt like doing that. What governed that? Okay, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It seemed like a good idea at the time. Okay, 50 years later, why can't we only listen to the pilots that dropped the bombs 50 years later? It was this Chiron stamp around it. So let's do one more chart. And we're gonna have this Pisces stuff right on my ascendant. Like I said, I love you. Okay. Anything. Okay. Libra 10 degrees. So 2 October 2024. Libra 10 degrees with Rahu in the 6th and the Chiron on 21 degree. It's not that we're not going to have a Chiron, but this is more about the Libra. This one is this other concerns. Okay, it's not necessarily this one. And the last of them fell. This is where we already delve into the Virgo. Okay, and here this is on my descendant, and now Aries. It's like, good luck with the next 2 years. Oh, by the way, if you succeed, then good luck with the next 2 years after that. But okay, Luna and Sun 8 degrees, while Chiron is sitting pretty in the 22nd degree, and Rahu is way into Pisces and Virgo. Okay, again, that's my concern. Now, of course, and I want to do Hiroshima and Nagasaki with 8 degrees natal chart or chart of the event. Let's see if we can get that. So we have astro that took care of us. So we have 6 August 1945. This was the Hiroshima. The drop of the Hiroshima, it's about time we look at it. I don't have Chiron. How can I do this without Chiron? Come on. It was ascendant ruled by Mercury, or so they say. Moon with Saturn, Rahu in Cancer, Venus in Cancer, Mars with Uranus, Pluto with the Sun, trining Uranus and Mars. What a lovely day to drop 2 A-bombs. But I'm sorry, I need Chiron for this. Astro theme maybe will give me some more stuff. Do we have a Chiron here? No, I have a Lilith, usually in those. We don't have a Chiron. I have to do it all by hand. This is Hiroshima. Astro Regulus, please have Chiron. Please have Chiron. Yes! Chiron in 1 degree Libra. Not anywhere with Rahu. Neptune 4 degrees. Jupiter. Where's Venus? What was Venus doing? It's another question here. She was in 1 degree Cancer, which would mean she's squaring. The Venus is squaring. Okay, I need to see this. What is the outer circle? Bombing. Oh, with Japan's chart. Okay. The ascendant of Japan is in the 9th house in Gemini. So the ascendant, so this Virgo thing, the ascendant is for the bomb, which we already know it's the bomb. So that would give us a Libra second house. Now if that's 12th, 11th, 10th, in the 10th house, what are you doing? Probably Placidus or something. Venus in Cancer. So she would be in the 11th. Oh, we have, of course, silly me. We have the Chiron of Japan. Okay, and you need to see Hiroshima and blah blah blah. I don't have the chart of Hiroshima. Okay, I don't have the chart of the manufacturing of the bomb. Yeah, but with what I do have, it is a very very significant Rahu in Cancer, conjuncting Chiron in 6 degrees Cancer, 1 degree away from Chiron in Japan. So Chiron, Rahu, and something that takes 50 years to talk about in this case. I'm not saying it's 50 years to recover from, but even the atomic veterans couldn't even talk about this for 50 years. So it's a timestamp of 50 years. And I don't know, like, how long does it take for things to recover from an A-bomb? But I can't ignore the cycles of Chiron. It may be several cycles of Chiron. Not the knowledge I would like to talk with you on a cup of coffee, but we are called to address this at these times. And when we have Chiron with Rahu on a mundane level, I'm not saying a nuclear bomb, but I am saying certain events, that certain things can only be addressed in 5 decades. Okay? It's serious enough. Unfortunately, it is serious enough. Now, because I'm so inclined and I still have 7 degree, then I want to look at Chiron in, you know what, there's an even lovelier way to do this, because I can do this by eclipses. And I want to see where were the eclipses around 2015. This is 23, I want the 15. So lunar eclipses, let's get lunar eclipses, yeah, the 2019, I want the 15, around 15. We get the Aries Libra, and then we get boom. This is the one, and Chiron is sitting very pretty on my ascendant. As you can see, I was a Me Too veteran, and Rahu is in the 11th house with Neptune. So this one is in September 2016. Okay, September 2016. It's already after the harassment itself, but it's kind of pretty much into me writing stuff and that is Luna in 24 degrees, which is exactly on my ascendant, Chiron applying to my ascendant, and that was when I was exposed to things that I'm layering up now and learning more about, that unfortunately had to do with academia, that unfortunately had to do with human trafficking, that had to do with certain structures that are related to all the structures, public and private sectors, and the jolly of that. What Chiron here on the mundane level was not with Ketu, okay? But it was definitely pinpointing, if you wanted to take a look at the personal chart where that happens, where it's not a Chiron return, then unfortunately that happened. So so that's another example that I can give you. If we go further down the road to a decade previous to that, I'm going to look at 2008, 2007, even before that. Oh, we can see 2004, 2005, 2006. And there we have the Virgo Pisces. And I want to see where Chiron was. Chiron is pretty much in Aquarius. Yeah, this was absolutely on my 7th and 1st. But Chiron was not anywhere near Ketu at this time. Let's take a look at the Denebalgedi one. It's 2008. So we might see something on a Moboom. 17 August 2008. Ketu and Rahu, 18 degrees. Aquarius, Sun and Moon, 24 degrees Aquarius on Denebalgedi, wealth redistribution. Okay? This is the crisis that was about wealth redistribution. I turned from the working sector to the unable to work sector. That literally was my story. Due to, by the way, what I now understand is CPTSD, but it's the 18th degree that happened in in 2007 actually, but also 2008, yes, 2008 August, yes. Oh, okay, this was 2 days before I was. No, it was August 2007 and August 2008. This was, and Neptune on the 22nd degree retrograde. Again, we have this thing, but you see Chiron with Rahu, with Ketu. Pardon? Where is it now? Chiron with Rahu. Ketu. Oh my God. Chiron with the notes. Can we have a Chiron with the notes? No, it's Chiron with Rahu. Because Rahu was in Aries, then in Pisces, then that. Oh yeah. So Chiron was with Rahu. Okay? I was going mental. But on a mundane level, we had the financial crisis of 2008. It's like within these eclipses. And certain things cannot be spoken of about this. And there's some wealth redistribution that happened there. And it will take 5 decades to process, even 2008. We're still in the aftermath of 2008. We haven't done. There are a lot of things that are not exposed yet. We can't talk about it yet. Can't heal yet. Okay, so that was the theme of the era. We get another one here. 2009, 19 February. Chiron is with the sun. It's another eclipse. It's a lunar eclipse. Chiron is with the sun in Aquarius. Rahu in 8 degrees, but Chiron and the sun in 20 and 21 degrees respectively. I'm sorry, the respectively is upside down. The sun 20, Chiron 21, for those who are only listening. Then 2009, so it's like I don't remember exactly what happened there mundanely, but there was another one. Okay. And that was with again Chiron. So thank you, Tom Jacobs, for the Chiron, like putting Chiron stuff. So I take a look at Chiron. This one is with Jupiter and Chiron in 2009, 6 August 2009. Okay, lunar eclipse. Both Jupiter and Chiron are retrograde. Chiron is on Deneb Algedi. Okay, so there was something about wealth redistribution, debt, or like some wound around wealth redistribution. The way the wealth was redistributed will take 5 decades to, yeah, to process. And there was also decentralization of wealth that created a certain wound that will take time to heal. And while it sounds so very positive, it can also mean privatization. Like, I don't know what to delineate for that, but obviously Chiron retrograde on Deneb Algedy is not necessarily happy news. With Jupiter, it's just magnifying that. It can mean that there are certain type of compassion with the wound attached. So I don't know how to, like, it's not, then about it is about wealth redistribution, is about, good policing, and like depending on how it goes. Chiron there, I don't know, like I really don't know what happened then. Planets where we get the Chiron with Rahu. And Chiron with Rahu is like it is what it is, you know? It's kind of like it is what it is. It's something that takes a while. Again, if you have placements around the cardinal's axis, but particularly around Aries in this place, it's the middle and decan of Aries. That's going to be the most, and it goes also with the first decan of Aries by the merit of the sun, and I think later the moon being there. So the first two decan of Aries, whatever you got there, that's going to be pinpointed the most at. There is a whole new beginning. It is there. There is also a wound attached to it. And I'm gonna try and pick up my own, pick up at my own Chiron related stuff that happened, so I can try and give you something that you can work towards, or that you're gonna have to make of it your own. But just as, if I think about 2008, eventually this crisis, I remember myself sitting in 2008, eventually we moved to the city, and eventually it would be my supposed mental state. It's a financial crisis, actually. I'm learning more about this today. But Saturn was going through Aquarius, actually. And then through receiving a certain tag or being marketed disease, I got funding for studies, which was a wound in me. Like, I didn't have the money to study. And when I go to the second event, that's me being Me Too veteran, I couldn't help but thinking back to me in my 20s. I began to study filmmaking. I was sitting in the class of a director, famous Israeli director, that was one of the people who are Me Too offenders. Okay, they were the offenders. And I sat in his class. I volunteered to sit there because I was eager to study. And it was filmmaking class. Nothing happened to me, fortunately, at that place. But he would be one of the people to be exposed. And I was literally studying filmmaking, And I was in my 20 something. And being Me Too veteran, it was happening when I was in my 30s. So between Saturn return and Saturn maturation, I'm gonna look at the eclipses of 219 as well. But the thing is, which was on the cardinal sign, but the thing is, I looked back to my 20s and understood why I didn't have the money to study filmmaking in my 20s in the academia. Okay? And that is really not like, what can I say? You know? So, what I have to say to you about these things is that there's something that happens. Okay, there's obviously something that happens. It happens within your ability to be a part of this, which is not going to feel that way. And there is a reason. If something is being held back from you, there's a reason it's being held back. Okay? There's a reason it's being held back. If something you can talk about, there's a reason. And it's a zeitgeist thing. It's a slow moving planet. It's one of the zeitgeist things. Yes, there is a wound there. Yes, there is grieving. It may take a while to find the group of people that you can talk to, and then it may take a while of what can you speak about is also an issue. I was going to be studying for a PhD, which everybody who cared for me told me you must go to the United States, by the way, including the offender. So you must go to the United States. You must study there. And when I was taking my first, like the first therapist that I was taking there, was EMDR. It was not the data know what's energy. It was not the like offender psychologist. But the thing is that I was not even thinking about myself. I knew that I was going to be a TA if I'm going to go to the United States, and I'm going to have students that were in fraternity parties and were raped. And it was very triggering for me, and I went to therapy to understand why is it triggering for me and what would I be able to do in favor of these students when I get there. All the while, I was consuming amphetamines because I did not have enough money for food, because I was trying to save like for a flight ticket for something. I didn't know what grant will I get. And I was basically starving myself to try and save money to get there. And then I found myself on the Israeli highest floor. The roof was closed. It was before me being to veteran, by the way. All the while, my previous psychologist was kind of noticing that one of the lecturers that I'm working with was doing things that are not okay and trying to get my attention to that. But he thought it was just about setting him boundaries and it will be okay. But I already had information that's not going to do the job. Eventually, I got out of there and began to compulsively write. So I did not eventually go to study in the United States. And I was not even thinking about myself, because when I was going to that first therapist, I was thinking about, okay, I'm not going to fraternity parties, but I was literally told by people who were TAs in the United States, in university, like I'm talking Ivy League, okay? That I'm going to sit in front of a class where half of the students are going to be both stoned, but also after rape. And I just have to deal with that. Or students are going to, if they're very brave, tell me, I'm sorry, I couldn't file this essay in on time because I was raped. and I'm just going to have to like deal with that. What do I do? What do I say? Where am I here? That's why I went to therapy, like how to be of support for them, not to like how to deal with the triggers that it brings up in me, which I didn't even understand why. Okay. Then the Me Too thing happened. So basically, I was starving myself to save money to go to study a PhD. If I would be accepted, it would mean that again the university would be my income, my housing, my whatnot, and that kind of thing happening over there. There would not be Sister Spooky, there would not be Shirley Young, there would not be any of that talking to you right now. There would be none of that. Okay, there would be none of that. So it's just, I can't even, right? It's one of those, I can't even. And I was thinking about this today. It's like, oh my gosh. And all those things kind of happening. So I was blocked from studying in filmmaking. I was blocked from going to the US to do a PhD, so that I will live, basically, so that I will survive, that I would not be trafficked. I was basically not finding even funding for therapy. And eventually, when I did go to a therapist, there was the EMDR person, and then I kind of said goodbye, because when I started speaking up, he got cold feet, and I just said goodbye, like it was no longer for me. And there was this issue with energy. Okay, everybody tells you to get into your experience. I said, well, I feel half of my body is me, half of my body is the person who's also offender, but before he was offender, he was a person who's trying to get close to us and sit with us in the pub and so on and so forth. And he looked at me like he saw a ghost. So I understood there's something also to do with science here, and the question of spirit and matter. My thesis, mind you, was in the philosophy of medicine in the body-mind question that I just like, he tossed a coin. I was like, oh, well, that's a well-chewed question. It's kind of like the Holocaust. It's just so well discussed. But I'm just looking at the philosophy of science of it, and looking at this question within the medical field, and kind of looking at the discourse and the kind of meta-analysis of the discourse. And then I learned about, conventional medicine, holistic medicine, blah, 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 blah. Like I was very, happy to study, and had a lot of creative freedom that I do honor and appreciate. So this whole, and that whole thing happens around like my thesis proposal. I did not write it. It got approved for obvious reasons, right? 2 years before COVID breaks out, which would already be after they don't know what energy psychologist who literally had astral sex with me and then became violent, what I now know is psychic attack. But did you know that, for example, your psychiatrist, if you have a psychiatrist, go to psychiatrist now with, the COVID, they can go to one of my colleagues who teaches energetic penetration, okay? And they can have this recreational workshop. But if one of their patients say to them, which is why I didn't even speak about this, oh, I went with psychic attack, and this was that they were violating my sexual boundaries, they would think to prescribe antipsychotics. But when they go to workshops to study how to energetically penetrate, but they don't know what's energy, it is so fucked up. And I'm saying this on the most naive level. We all have dissonances within our head. Okay, we all have things that we don't connect the dots. Okay, but when the dots connect, you can see it's not even big pharma. I'm talking just about the bias of the doctor. Of course, I recommend you to see how medical research gets approved and what is being hidden in the way, and why your MD, however beautiful person they may be, and however well intended, it's not just about they're being bribed by marketing. Even if they're like withstanding that or withstanding threats, they are not being exposed to how many deaths. Okay, they're not being exposed to that. So the whole chain of, and I'm speaking as a person who delved into the philosophy of science, who delved into evidence-based medicine versus science-based medicine, the frequentists versus the Bayesian logic, and all kind of like all that party. It is a party. You get none of that. You just, toss science away, look follow the cash, but also follow the process. And it's nowhere near science, which is not, it's a given. It's a given, but I speak as a person who's both learning about the democratization question of sciences and have been there, and understanding the politics and the fiscal and the crookery that actually goes on when it's an issue that we dealt in filmmaking as well. If I want to do a movie that's creative, but I also want it to be profitable so it gets made, I need to have a balance between the fiscal logic and the legacy logic. And so legacy here is your death. Okay? This is what you need to understand when you apply this problem of fiscal logic versus legacy creation, humanitarian, whatnot, into medicine. It's an inherent structural problem of science, theoretical science, or even the attempts to have the Gedankes being applied to an applied science. So, and we're not even at a decade from Me Too. Okay, we're a decade from 2008. We're not a decade from Me Too. Okay, and so just so that you look and see parts and parts and parts and parts of this Chironic thingy. And of course, with my thesis, I understood that to speak up and to heal is more important than to try to sue in a system that is already crooked in any way. And I got to know a lawyer, great Israeli lawyer, Rani Sadovnik Aloni, that was also the lawyer of my colleague, Maya, my Me Too colleague, Maya, Institute University Haifa. So that, and she was silenced for 8 years as the cycle of Venus. But it's only recently that it's kind of like, well, it was the people, it's a human trafficking and the people who say, no, we're just sexually harassed, to be kicked out of the system. But it's like, hey, we need to work someplace, we need to study someplace. And then you can't kind of be a part of the egregore, because if you point into spirit of matter question, and this is a question that it's in physics, it is in the medicine, of course, it is in theism, it is in psychology, it is in politics, it's everywhere. You can't have a stand that's not approved by a pack of child sex offenders as a scientific consensus. Okay? And that is, and I'm speaking as a person who delved into epistemics, ontology, the democratization question of the sciences, possible biases, what is the biases of intuitive science, what is the biases of what we call cognitive, like really naively delving into that, because I found refuge in that. And kind of like I can't not see that what you deem as scientific is governed by a pack of people according to their kink, which humane or not. Okay? And although it does move, and I'll end with that. So that those are the stuff that come up. And I just, if this meets your chart, if Chiron Rahu meets your chart in 2024, 2023, it meets mine. And I just wish us all an at least relatively blessed time, and bless us all, because for damned we need that blessing. So